Representatives voting today on a resolution to impeach President Donald Trump. It's highly unlikely it'll pass, but it does mark the very first time that the Democrat-controlled chamber will weigh in on the divisive issue.
We cannot wait. As we wait, we risk having the blood of somebody on our hands, and it could be a member of Congress.
Congressman Al Green there of Texas, who has been pushing the impeachment file for the past 2 years, really. The vote coming in the wake of Donald Trump's tweets against 4 Democratic congresswomen of color, many of which people felt were racist tweets. The House voting to condemn those on Tuesday. The president, meantime, seems unfazed by all the controversy he created, or perhaps he's relishing in it. Hitting the campaign trail again tonight for a big Make America Great Again rally going on in North Carolina. Avis Jones-DeWeaver is joining us from our studios in Washington, D.C. She is a race relations expert and the CEO of the Exceptional Leadership Institute for Women. Oh, Avis, where to begin on this? I mean, your take on, first of all, that resolution censuring the president. I appreciate it's symbolic, but what do you make of it?
Well, it is symbolic, but it is at least putting a marker in history that this is the first president of the United States that has ever had such a stain against his presidency, where he's literally been censored by Congress because of his behavior, and such outrageous and racist behavior, to be even more specific. And so though it's kind of like a tiger without any teeth, at least it is letting future generations know that there was a level of dissent among elected officials who saw what happened during this presidency and wanted to go down in history as saying they saw it as immoral and wrong, and they wanted to make sure others saw it that way and could account it as being that way in the future as well.
Avis, as you and I are speaking, I'm hearing word from our control room. The president is speaking right now about this issue. We're just going to listen in briefly to that.
Espousing the views of our country, the 4 congresswomen. I think that they've said horrible things that the press doesn't cover. I think you should try covering it. When you look at some of the things they said, they're unthinkable. If somebody else or me or anybody else said things like that, it would be historic. So you ought to look at some of their horrible statements, because there's never been statements like that. Well, the Democratic Party is really going in a direction that nobody thought possible. They're going so far left, they're going to fall off a cliff. So I think they're making a big mistake, but who knows? That's up to them. Well, there's a lot of talk about the fact that she was married to her brother. I know nothing about it. I hear she was married to her brother. You're asking me a question about it. I don't know, but I'm sure that somebody would be looking at that. Well, I think the story last night was that 187 Republicans voted in favor of Trump and 4 voted against. I think that was the big story. That seems to be the story. There's great unity in the Republican Party. It's very unfair what's happened with respect to the way, I would say, Republicans are being treated, frankly, but certainly the way this president has been treated. In the history of our country, there's never been anything like this. And this should never be allowed to happen to another president again. Should never be allowed to happen. Despite that, we've created the greatest economy in the history of our country. We're doing things like nobody's ever done. We have the best job numbers in the history of our country. African American, Asian American, women, Hispanic American, best job numbers we've ever had. And I have to go because I see it starting to pour.
Did someone disagree with you and relishing this fight with the Congressman?
I'm not relishing the fight. I'm enjoying it because I have to get the word out to the American people. And you have to enjoy what you do. I enjoy what I do. The key is, it's not a question of relishing. They're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. That's not where our country wants to be. We're not going to go, and we're not going to be a socialist country. It's not going to happen.
All right, so listening to the president here as he gets set to depart for North Carolina, talking about the rain and Marine One, there you see it in the background there, about to depart as he heads off to do a rally. Avis Jones-DeWeaver is standing by in Washington. She was listening in as well. She's a race relations expert. It's interesting what he said at the end, Avis, and I know you were listening as well, where it seems to be he's trying to characterize those 4 Democratic congresswomen of color as radicals, un-American, socialists, possibly communists, totally out of step with average Americans, and trying to sort of say, look, this is the Democratic Party. Is that who you want to vote for in 2020?
Absolutely. So those are the talking points that you will be hearing throughout the rest of his presidential campaign. Mark my words on it. But let me also remind you that as of the latest tally in June of 2019, this is also a president who's told well over 10,000 lies to the American public. So you can just add a few more lies to that tally, given what he's just said.
In terms of the Republicans here, I know that they have been accused of cowardice, of sort of putting their political careers first here instead of standing up to the president. How much of the Republican base do you think agrees with what he said about those women?
That's an excellent question. I think that there is a sizable amount of the Republican base that agrees. And here what's interesting here is really the definition of this word base, right? So I would argue that that base really comprises maybe about 30% to 35% or so of the electorate. It is not the majority of the voting public. However, that base is very important to any Republican who has to go through a primary, because the base makes up the majority of any electorate that actually votes at primaries. And so they're in this sort of political quandary where they're afraid, I believe a lot of them are afraid, that if they come out against this president, that they will be primaried and they could lose. However, that makes them less attractive to the general public when they run for the general election, which is why I think we saw the results that we saw in the last midterms with regards to the House turning over to the Democrats.
So is it kind of like, we may not like the guy, but he's our guy?
Yes, it's kind of that. The sad thing is, though, in moments like this, you have to stand up if you are a person of character for what's morally right and take the consequences as they come. I am shocked, for example, by someone like a Mitt Romney who went out of his way to criticize Trump when he was running for president, held a news conference, called him everything but a son of God during that news conference. And then when this controversy happens, it looks as if he's been neutered. When he was specifically asked by the reporter, what are his thoughts about whether or not those tweets were racist, he literally walked away rather than answer the question. So when you see the behavior like that coming from someone like a Mitt Romney, someone with standing, someone that had been very well respected in the party, it tells you how far over the deep end the Republican Party has gone in terms of losing its moral center, if it ever had one.
Donald Trump often, says that he loves the show and he loves the theater, and he comes from a television background. I mean, I wonder if you think part of this is that, he knows very well those sort of comments are going to elicit this kind of media coverage and public outcry, and he thrives on that.
Absolutely. He reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, right? He loves the pageantry. He can put on a show. He can make everything look wonderful. I mean, he's a great sort of manipulator in that way. But when you pull back the curtain, he's empty. There's no substance there. There's no really, I would argue, deep humanity there or empathy there for other human beings. And so that's his big flaw. Unfortunately, what he's done, though, with this pageantry is he's sort of rallied up this very, very fanatical fan base. And it's that fanatical fan base that has the rest of the Republican Party cowering in their corners, afraid to stand up to the bully and the racist and the misogynist that they have leading their party.
And Avis, if this is button pushing by President Trump, I mean, what is the way to deal with it if you're on the other side? I mean, do you ignore it? Do you fight back? Do you risk normalizing it?
This is the quandary that the Democrats need to find their way out of. Unfortunately, it seems as if they have no clue how to deal with this. And I would say that the worst reaction possible is to ignore it because you do tend to normalize it. It seems like they are pushing all of their chips on the election. What they need to understand is that this president has done nothing if he hasn't kept his base motivated, if he hasn't kept his base really in the center in terms of supporting him. They are going to come out, come hell or high water, with this next election. Though there are a lot of people who are anti-Trump and want to see him out of office, the Democrats need to do more than to hope that that alone is going to rally their base. They need to show some moral fortitude. They need to show a backbone. When they fight back, what they will do is they will excite their base and expand the electorate to get those people who sat on the sidelines in 2016 to come out and vote in 2020.
One last thing, in terms of those four women who are at the heart of this story, of course, we know that there are some divisions even within the Democrats. These women are on the left, they're progressive. There have been some issues between them and some of the more moderates in the Democratic Party. Do they need in any way, shape, or form, Avis, do they need to tone down some of the policies they're pushing, such as universal Medicare or free tuition or some of these policies that the president is using now in his speeches, and no doubt he'll talk about tonight, to say, look, these are radicals, these are socialists. And I'm just curious whether they have any role to play in this, or is that the wrong move, that they should stay sticking to their principles?
I think they should stick to their principles. The bottom line is the Democratic Party is a big tent party. That means that there are people in our party that's very diverse. There are individuals who are very diverse racially, very diverse religiously, and very diverse in terms of their positions on various policy planks. And so, yes, they should stick to their guns. Quite frankly, they were elected on those same issues. They are representing their constituents. So their constituents put them there to fight for those things. There are other people in the Democratic Party whose constituents put them there to fight for other things. So everyone should stay by their principles. I think what's important that the Democratic Party do is, instead of telling them to sort of tone down their beliefs, right, which is, we have a democracy last I checked, what they need to do is understand how to put forth a platform and a plank and policy preferences that will attract the American public to them. Have those debates, but also not shy away from calling this president on his very real flaws and his very dangerous autocratic tendencies. If we put him basically on trial in the court of public opinion based on nothing but his ridiculous behavior, this should be a win for the Democrats running away.
Avis Jones-DeWeaver, race relations expert, CEO of the Exceptional Leadership Institute for Women. Avis, always good to have you on the program. Thank you for getting to our studios as well and helping us as we quarterback our coverage on the story today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.